Have you ever had somebody hurt you so badly, done you wrong so severely, that you screamed out loud or internally, "I'll never forgive you"? Well, I'm here to tell you today some steps that you can utilize to learn how to forgive and realize that that journey of learning to forgive can change your life. Hi, I'm Trish. Thanks for coming back to That's So Trishy. If you've been here before, I really appreciate it. We talk about all kinds of things: inner and outer beauty, motivation, how to live our best lives. A lot of us over 40. So I talk about videos that are external. We do beauty tips, tricks, fashion, but I also love to talk about potentially motivational things that affect us in our lifetime. And today is one that I think that everyone has struggled with, and certainly me, is unforgiveness. Have you ever had somebody wrong you so badly? Some of the things that come to mind that have happened to people, that not necessarily me, but are horrific: abuse, murder, crimes, lying, betrayal. The things that people can do to us can absolutely cripple us. They're horrid, they're horrible. But have you ever thought about the aftermath of those horrible instances can be more damaging to you than the original assault? They can, because there's something that happens with unforgiveness that lives on unless we stop it. You can do the studies. The studies have shown that physically, medically, if we have unforgiveness, it damages our bodies, it damages us internally. And also, if you're a spiritual believing person like I am, God tells us we can't have unforgiveness because it damages us spiritually. It damages our souls. And I'm a firm believer, which may seem ironic because so much of my channel is about beauty and trying to look better, but I really believe the most important thing is our souls. So there's this trick to unforgiveness that our enemy, that the world doesn't want us to realize, that unforgiveness can destroy us. I know personally, I have had family members, people close to me, spouses, friends, acquaintances, all do or say things to me that hurt. I mean, cut to the core. Some of them crippled me, brought me to my knees. Some of those made me hate myself, made me blame myself, made me want to feel like I wanted to die. But the process to recovery is so vital, because not only do we have to move on, we have to forgive, and that's the hard part. Sometimes the moment of the insult, the moment of the attack, the moment of the assault is so severe, it's so horrific, but the lingering pain and bitterness that literally grows, think of a weed growing, that's what's more damaging to us. So I'm here to tell you that, first of all, if you have someone in your life that is continually hurting you, you can forgive them, but you don't have to live in that abuse. So I would never, ever encourage anybody that they have to stay in that place. When it's a family member, it's very hard. It's very tricky, because sometimes you can walk away and sometimes you can't. But I do believe that it is okay to protect yourself, limit yourself from the offender, from the person who's hurting you, if you have to. But the most important thing you have to do is start working internally on yourself. So for me, one of my offenders, I have had to deal with the pain of their offenses most of my life. But as I've gotten older, I've started to have more grace. It hasn't meant that the things they did to me have lessened. And there's some controversy over forgive and forget. I don't know that you necessarily forget. I think you forget on the same level that the pain hurt you. But I think you definitely can remember and learn from that and be cautious. But we have to forgive. Again, I'm a big believer in the Bible, and the Bible continually says that if we won't forgive, God won't forgive us. And every single one of us has flaws and made mistakes. And I think that's key to our discussion today. When I finally decided I have to get over this hate and unforgiveness I'm having for this individual, when I finally got over that, is I feel like God spoke to me in my heart. I feel like that God does speak to us, and sometimes we don't recognize that it's Him. And I feel like He began to show me to look at that person and realize that yes, what they did to me was very wrong, but to realize they're a very flawed person as much as I am. We all have our vices. We all have things we struggle with. Every single one of us on this planet is flawed and has struggles. So I began to think about my offender and how God saw my offender. And I thought, of course God loves my offender, but God sees the flaw and loves the offender through that flaw and still can bless their lives in other situations. Now that's a sticky wicket, because I do believe you reap what you sow. I believe if you do something purposely bad, people say karma. I don't think it's karma. I think it's a spiritual law. You reap what you sow. God can forgive us. He says He'll forgive us if we ask forgiveness. But there's a spiritual law set in motion, and I think that poor circumstances can come from the evil that we maybe knowingly took part in. He can forgive you, and we'll talk more about that later when we dive into some of my issues. But back to the offender, God really spoke to me to start looking at the offender how He looks at them. And He does not eye in on that one offense, which may seem huge to us. He looks at the whole individual. And what does He do? He loves them anyway. Wow, that's huge to me. So I began to think about their imperfections, my imperfections, and think about how much God loves me in spite of my imperfections. So I'm not rationalizing what they have done wrong. I'm looking at it in a different avenue. I'm realizing that their sin is no worse than my sin. But here is the key. If we choose to live in that place, I'm never going to forgive them. It does damage us. It damages us physically. It damages us mentally. It keeps us from moving forward. You just almost physically feel the pressure and the lack of peace from unforgiveness. Some of the obstacles to forgiving people are if they keep doing it, are if they're not sorry. That's one of the biggest things. I put that on my Instagram yesterday. We have to learn to forgive even if they're not sorry. Why? Because we're really forgiving for God because He commands us to, but for us. Our forgiveness may not change that person or that situation. Our forgiveness changes us. If we don't forgive, like I said, that assault, whatever they did to us, lives on and on and on. If we can learn to forgive, it frees us. It takes the power away from what they did. But again, I want to emphasize, don't hate the hater. Hate the hate. Remove yourself from the hate, but hate the hate. And then realize that you've got to let that go. You can't live with that hate. So things that I do is I start praying. Number one, I just pray, God, help me. Because I'm really mad. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I don't know how to fix this. I'm human. Admit your humanness and pray and ask Him. And then start thinking about that person in different ways. Think about some of the good points that they have. Think about how they were as a child. Think about maybe why they are the way they are. Again, I'm not saying rationalizing it because the behavior is bad, but think about what led them to be that way. Some people are just evil. I believe that. I've met 2 people in my entire life that I really believe are pure evil. But most of us hurt because we're hurt. So start to think about grace and compassion instead of dwelling on what they did to you. Say somebody who was abused or somebody who had a crime committed. Stop thinking so much as you heal about that and start thinking about, why did they do that? Were they abused? Did they not know love? Did they have fear? Did they have power struggles? And start trying to have compassion for what made them do that. The next thing I want to talk about is one of the biggest. It's a hard challenge we've talked about, forgiving others. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. I have some people in my life that have hurt me 9 years ago, and I think that I will do really well for several years and something will happen and it'll want to fester back up. It's like that. It'll come right back at you, and I have to start the work all over again. Lord, I know I have to forgive them. I have to move on. And so it's a process. It's a continual process, but it's only going to help us and help us grow. But do you know what the hardest thing is to forgive? Some of you may already know where I'm going with this. The hardest thing to forgive is ourselves, by far. When I was in my young 20s, I did something that now looking back, I think, how horrible. What a horrible thing I did. And I wasn't a horrible person, believe it or not. There was a lot of circumstances that led up to why I made that terrible choice that I did. And I hurt a lot of people. And I can tell you, I carried around that guilt and unforgiveness to myself for probably 20 years. 20 years. Do you know how many things that affected in my life? It made me insecure. It made me think that people didn't like me. At times, right after that incident happened, I wanted to die. I've talked about on my channel before, I've struggled with depression and suicidal thoughts as a younger girl. And because I failed, I wanted to die. So the unforgiveness of myself was a continual crime. It was killing me on the inside. It prevented me from doing so many things. I do regret what I did, but I have finally come to a place at almost 52, in 6 weeks I'll be 52, that I've forgiven that young girl. I'm not the same girl at 52, nearly 52, that I was at 25, and I have forgiven her. She's not a bad girl. She made mistakes, and I can't tell you how freeing my life has been. The shame is gone. The insecurity is gone. I have so much more love in my life for people and for myself. Challenging part, people still remember. I ran into somebody last year that gave me so much trouble when I did the wrong thing, and they evidently remember. And humans are not always so full of grace, and they did something really rude to me. And at first it hurt. And for a moment, I was right back to that 25-year-old girl. And I went out my car and I prayed about it, and I thought, no, I have forgiven myself. God tells us if we ask Him for forgiveness, He will forgive us. And if my Creator, who fashioned my skin and my whole person, if He can forgive me, I can forgive myself. So I had picked that back up, and I had to put that down again. But I can tell you, I live my life now finally free of shame. I refuse to let that unforgiveness live in my heart. So just some things to ponder about. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. I hope you got something out of it. Maybe it wasn't a woohoo enjoyable video. Maybe you didn't learn beauty tips, but maybe it touched you somewhere deep inside about something you've been thinking about, knowing, I gotta forgive. I gotta forgive that person, or I've gotta forgive myself. I care about you. I'm praying for you. Thank you for stopping by. That's So Trishy. I hope you have a super blessed guiltless, happy day. And I'll see you in the next video.